Welcome to ForexTV.com. Today is Friday, January 23rd. I'm Kathleen Reddington with your New York Forex Market Buzz. The yen makes big gains and the pound takes big falls. And now for a look at the latest headlines from the CUP News Desk. The UK economy contracted even more than expected in the fourth quarter with a 1.5% decline in quarterly GDP. This marks the sharpest fall in almost 30 years. The contraction in the fourth quarter GDP officially puts the UK in a technical recession. Expectations had called for a more modest decline of 1.2% following the previous period's 0.6% contraction. UK retail sales volume surprised to the upside in December, rising 1.6% in monthly terms. Economists had expected sales levels to decline 0.7% in the month after rising 0.3% previously. On an annual basis, retail sales volumes increased 4% in December, humbling the 1.5% gain expected and November's 1.3% rise. December's rise was driven primarily from gains in non-food store sales, non-store retail sales, and repair. The Bank of Canada's seasonally adjusted measure of core inflation held steady in December compared to November for the second month at 2.4% year over year. The consensus forecast for core CPI month over month was for the index to decline 0.3% compared to November. The annual core CPI rate was in line with expectations. Today we are joined by Stephen Leahy of Backbay FX. Hi Stephen, how are you today?
Doing very well, thanks Kathleen. As always, thank you so much for having me on.
Anytime, Stephen. The yen is making gains on all the majors today. How long do you think this recent yen boost will last?
My goodness, the yen has made some impressive gains. I remember it was just a mere, I think 3 months ago that we were talking about yen breaking the 100 level, and would we actually see a dip below 90? Is it possible? That's, historic and all this fun stuff, and here we are. And so the question, as you ask, is how much further do we go here? I do think that psychologically, breaking the 90 barrier on dollar-yen was fairly important here for traders, in that I actually think it triggers kind of market forces to push dollar-yen lower here. Although, that being said, Bank of Japan has reason to intervene now that we are towards the latter half of January. The end of the fiscal year for Japanese companies is a little bit later on in the late spring, and so there's certainly incentive for the Bank of Japan to, if nothing else, to talk about dollar-yen rates and how they don't like the movements in the market, so that the Japanese companies can benefit when they repatriate their profits towards the end of their corporate year. So as for how much lower can we go here and kind of how much longer does this pain happen, I still think we have a good 3-4 weeks where the bias is going to be stronger yen for sure.
All right, and now kind of for the opposite, instead of impressive gains, some impressive losses. When do you think we'll see a bottom in sterling, especially after today's poor GDP news?
Interesting as you bring up the core GDP news. The numbers actually on the retail side, you point out, were great, kind of beating expectations significantly. Obviously, the overall numbers were horrible, and I think sterling still got a further ways to fall. You and I spoke previously about the euro versus sterling pair when it was approaching the 98 level, and could we possibly see parity? At the time, I was of the opinion that move had been excessive and kind of exacerbated by some retail client flows, and we did see the pair pull off. But now we're starting to look like we're inch back in that direction again, and so, I do think sterling has a way to go, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see the euro versus sterling have a crack at parity there, which would be just a shocking number to see across the screen.
Equities are headed lower again this morning. Is this still all emotional trading? What do you think is pushing equities?
Since we've spoken before, that we've got a belief in our shop that there's a great correlation between a lot of the carry trades in global equities in general. And so what we see here is, and we believe that the carry trade actually leads a lot of equities. And so once again, we saw sterling yen take a pounding today. We think that the equities market really is still in trouble, and our thoughts on that really just come from what we see in the carry trade. And so we'll continue to, while we don't trade actively in the equities market, we do keep an eye on it, and we do think that as equities go lower, as sterling yen goes lower, we think they're correlated. We don't see any stop in sight quite yet.
All right, Stephen, and before we let you go, today is Friday, so I want to know what pairs you're going to be looking at and what trading recommendations you'll have as we are headed into the weekend and the start of a fresh new week.
Sure. One of the pairs that actually has caught our attention, one of the more esoteric and volatile pairs that we normally don't trade, but keeping on the subject of short sterling, we were wondering what to short sterling against. You mentioned earlier that some of the Canadian inflation numbers came in a little bit stronger than expected. So we actually have been looking at sterling versus Canada, and it actually broke through a technical level not that long ago here, intraday on an intraday basis. We broke below 1.70 on sterling Canada. And so as a shorter-term trade and going into the weekend where we normally don't carry big positions, we'll leave on a short sterling versus Canada position. And the other trade that caught our attention today specifically is euro-dollar. Interesting, dollar strengthened for the week, even though we've seen Treasury bills kind of point towards weakness in dollar volume flows, which is a little bit technical. But so we're looking for euro-dollar to make a little bit of a correction toward the end of the day here lower. And so if we can get back up to the 129.40, 129.45 level, which is really only 15 points higher from where we're at the moment, we'll go short some euro-dollar here and try to hold that through the weekend.
All right, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're quite welcome. Thanks for having me on.
This has been your New York Forex Market Buzz with Stephen Leahy of Backbay FX. I'm Kathleen Reddington. Join us later this afternoon, 4 p.m. exchange, right here on ForexTV.com.